All right, welcome back to Talking Ball with Pat Leonard on the Believe Network and the PL on NFL YouTube channel. I'm the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer, and we have a special guest here today, Giants legend, Ring of Honor inductee, Amani Toomer, one of the best NFL analysts and also, of course, a tremendous player during his time in the league. Thank you so much for joining me, Amani.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate getting on your show.
Yeah, no, thank you. We are brought to you here on Talking Ball by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, My Bookie Sportsbook, Estate 98 Coffee, and Sal Loretta for Men, luxury menswear and tailoring in Midland Park, New Jersey. Got to get you in there, Amani, although I know you don't need any help dressing well. All right, so let's always come and correct, right? And that's what we're going to do here today. The reason I asked you to come on the show this week is you had a very poignant, I thought, comment on the Barton Carlin show on ESPN New York radio. And this was in relation to your former teammate, Michael Strahan, waving the Philadelphia Eagles flag during a pregame segment on Fox before the Super Bowl, where he was essentially saying, I feel so strongly about Saquon Barkley as a player and as a person, I'm willing to, even as a Giants legend, to wave this Eagles flag. A lot of fans were upset. You called it a warning shot from a former Giant like yourself who wants to be proud and is struggling to be so at the moment. What can you expand on exactly where you and the Giants legends are right now in terms of how you view the organization, what's wrong, and why it's gotten to this point where we're seeing Michael Strahan with a flag that essentially says "Go Birds"?
Well, I think you got to separate the players and the fans and the relationship we have with the organization. Fans love the organization regardless, and there's a reciprocation with the organization as well. When we were playing, there was not this unconditional love. We had to perform to remain on the Giants. We had to prove our mettle year in, year out, play in, play out, and it was very conditional. So that's the difference between the players and the fans. So now that I'm not a player anymore and I'm, on the other side of things, I feel like I want to hold the organization to the same standard that they held us to where we're not just going to be sitting back and cheering and all this stuff and support. Well, we're going to support because we love the organization, but we have a different type of relationship. It's not the same. So when I see the organization kind of floundering the way it is, and then I see the organization kind of just say, "Oh well, let's just do the same thing again, and we'll see if we're getting better." That's when I'm just kind of like, "Nah, man, I can understand where Strahan's coming from, and I think a lot of people are like that. We're just disappointed, and first of all, we don't know how it got this way. Secondly, all the moves that have been made, I love Brian Dable, I love Joe Sheehan, but at the end of the day, we're not. This is not a personality contest. This is a results business, and the results just aren't there. And it's not personal. I don't hate these guys. I just want the results. It's like show me the baby. I mean, show me something to be proud of because they weren't proud. My first year here when I couldn't see the field, or they weren't proud when my second year I still wasn't starting, or even my third year when I wasn't starting, they weren't proud. They were just kind of like, yeah, well, you're getting paid. You should just be quiet and, keep working. And that's just what I did. And I got to a point where I was an integral part of the organization for a long time, but it wasn't given. It wasn't because they liked my personality. It was because I performed. And so I'm just want to hold a mirror up to say, hey, look, and Strahan was the exact same way. There was many times when, oh, he's making too much money. He's too much of this. He's too much of that. He thinks he's all that. And he had to prove himself. And so I feel like the organization that I love, that Strahan loves, that a lot of the former Giants love and take a lot of pride in, it's just not going in the direction that we want it to go in. I mean, we're one of the worst. I mean, we were fighting for the first pick of the draft. I don't ever remember us getting that high, except when we got Saquon. But it's not been good, and especially the draft picks have not panned out. And it's sad to see. I'm sorry to go on for so long, but it's just sad to see that
No.
players have to go other places to let their talent show. So the development of our players is just not there.
No, it is sad to see because, like you said, especially recently with guys like Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney, it's starting to become a trend. It's not just like it's not one guy here or there. Saquon Barkley's signing with Philadelphia, the Giants' decision to actively like not want him and let him walk was really the genesis of what, from my vantage point, Michael's comment and his willingness to do that. And I think I could tell you, Amani, from being in the locker room all year, and this isn't a secret, but I think from the Giants players' point of view, it set a dangerous precedent, both with McKinney and Saquon too. But with Saquon in particular, because the players felt so strongly about what he was to their locker room as a leader and as a person, from my vantage point, it set a dangerous precedent, not only getting rid of a good or great player, but also maybe sending a dangerous message like this is not what we value here above all. My question to you is, how do you come back from that as an organization? Like when you were here, like you said, certain behaviors and work ethics and values and leadership was rewarded and other qualities were not. Like if you're not rewarding the proper qualities, can you come back from that? Like how do you undo that as an organization?
That's a great question because when I first got here, Dan Reeves was here, and him and Ernie and George Young did not get along. So everybody would be in the locker room taking stock on who brought you here. So if because I remember Dan Reeves signed, there was a defensive lineman that Dan Reeves signed, gave a big signing bonus, but George Young didn't like him. So halfway through training camp, they cut him. So because George Young cut one of Dan Reeves' guys, Dan Reeves turned around and cut one of George Young's guys. So it just became this thing where the main thing wasn't the main thing. It wasn't about how well you perform on the field. It was about how well you fit in, who likes you, who brought you here. And it was just a total cancer because we knew that at the end of the day, it didn't matter how well you played or how great you played. If they didn't want you, they didn't want you. And then when Ernie Accorsi came in, Ernie Accorsi and Jim Fossil, they cut all that out. They were like, look, I remember Fossil, his first meeting, he was like, I don't have a lot of rules because I don't want to fine you. He said, I just want you guys to come in there and play. And if you play well, you will be here. If you don't, you will not. And, I don't understand how, like, a lot of these locker rooms are like, oh, we don't like this type of guy. We're not, this isn't the Boy Scouts. This isn't, the Glee Club. This isn't, American Idol or The Bachelor. This is football. And you're going to get some guys that can just play football really well that have questionable character. Now, the true art of coaching is to get those guys in line, to get those guys to kind of be bigger than themselves and sacrifice for the team. And that's what I did not see. And when you get a guy like Saquon, who is all the above, and just because he plays running back and you don't have the creativity to figure out how to make that running back have your best player be the focal point of your offense, I have a problem with that because that's not how my experience or any of the older players' experience with the Giants was. If you could play, you're going to stay here. And if your skill set is not exactly what they want, well, then they're going to go back into their learning how to coach football or learning how to create a football team and figure out, because there's many ways to skin a cat. I mean, you saw that this past weekend with the Eagles. They don't have the best quarterback. They just have the best team, and teams win Super Bowls. Quarterbacks give you a leg up, and they can smooth over some deficiencies. But if you don't have the team, it doesn't matter. I mean, you have one of the best quarterbacks of all time. People said he's better than Tom Brady. But if nobody's blocking for him, it doesn't matter. So we need to build a team and stop worrying about a certain position and make sure that we're putting the best 53 out there, because 53 will beat one every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Man, those are great stories, and that's great analysis. Essentially, what you're talking about is, well, they didn't tear it down, but from your experience going from one regime to another, you're essentially explaining that Fossil came in and, in so many words, tore it down to the studs from a standpoint of whatever was going on here before, wipe that off the board, and now we're starting at square one. Here's the new law, or here's the new expectation, simplifying it and essentially resetting it, right? So that could be a reset of a program, which can take some time. But if things are going wrong enough, maybe that's where you're going. So but that takes me to my next question, Amani, is where can the Giants start to turn this around? And I guess I would specify this question by saying, when you looked on the field this season, what areas of the team, as far as performance, did you feel were so glaringly not being held accountable that need to be held accountable better for the expectations to be higher the way they once were when you were playing here?
The attention to detail was not there. The fact that, kicks blocked, the special teams was, I mean, they played well in terms of the returner. We have a really good returner, but it's the little things that separate the average NFL team and the great team. Tackling, being in the right position, not blowing coverages, catching the football, making the extra, making the extra effort to block, not fumbling the football. Like, these are all in turnovers. Those are things that kill you as a football team. And if those things, the basics aren't being met, I don't know. I mean, it's obvious. It's not a talent thing. It's a attention to detail thing.
You're talking about things on like page 1 of how to win a football game, essentially.
I'm talking, well, in the NFL, they say more games are lost than won, right? That's the old adage, right? There's about 9 or 10 games that were lost with no opportunity to win because of the self-inflicted wounds that the Giants had. It had nothing to do with the other team. Everything to do with, we missed 10 tackles, or we have a corner out there we have somebody out there, I'm not going to say any names, who's not putting forth effort. Like, that is the basic of winning. Like, how do you not play with effort in the NFL? And that's either one or two things. Either they're not holding him accountable, or the team isn't deep enough to where you have a real fear of losing your position every day of the week. And that's one thing that has to happen. The level, the level of the team has to rise, because there's very few players that could not put forth effort and remain on the field. I mean, we had a couple guys that we drafted and brought in from free agency, and they didn't give effort. They got rid of them quick. Like, it wasn't a thing where, oh, he's young. Proof is in the pudding. Like, if you don't put it out there on the field, I don't care where we drafted you. I don't care what you did in college. I don't care what you did on other teams. You gotta show and prove for the NY. And if you don't, then we don't got no space for you. And that's how you build pride in an organization. That's how you build pride in the team that you're playing for. When you look around and you're like, wow, I got to play hard because I know this guy is going to play hard too, and I'm not going to let him down. And if I let him down, they got another young guy who's about to take my spot. Like, there's that type of pressure that you always have to feel. And if you don't feel that pressure, that's on everybody.
So, there's a lot that needs to be fixed about this roster and team, right? It still feels more like a building process than anything. But right now, they need a quarterback, obviously, and they need to take a big swing at one, whether that's in free agency or trade or the draft or both. Put it to you, we're still early in the process, but Matthew Stafford could be available via trade from the LA Rams. You have options like Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston, Kirk Cousins available via trade from the Falcons. And then you also, Amani, of course, have the number 3 overall pick, Shador Sanders, Cam Ward as options, whether it's there or trading up. But along with all of that, you need to improve the roster. As you just said, you need better players. You need more depth. How would you like to see them do that for this year? Of course, the context of it is that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll feel like they're almost on borrowed time going into year 4. So there's also this self-preservation and possible aspect of needing to show enough improvement from 3-14 this year. So you can't just say, hey, we're punting on 2025. Not that they ever would. But how would you like to see them kind of measure all that out as far as investment in a quarterback? Is Matthew Stafford the answer, or is it better to go, say, the Jameis Winston, Shador Sanders route?
I think, well, when they drafted, first of all, I think they need to draft the best player on the board. Like, I think the Eagles taught us. You know, they took the Giants playbook. They took how we won in 07 and 11, and they created a team around this defensive line that took one of the most elite quarterbacks that we've seen in years and made him look pedestrian. So I feel like you need to build up the trenches. That you can win in this league without an elite quarterback. You cannot win in this league without an elite offensive line, because one thing that happens when you have that elite offensive line, you travel well, because running game travels everywhere. You don't have to come up with these elaborate plays, because all you got to do is hand the ball off to a running back who's capable, and you can get yards regardless. And, you know, the passing game is beautiful. I was a wide receiver. I loved it. But I realized that when you look at how you win a football game, more often than not is because you're controlling the clock and you're keeping that high-powered offense on the that you're playing against on the sideline. So there's so many ways to win in football. They could do a deep dive and really look at the talent, because we let 3 Pro Bowlers out of our building, McKinney, Saquon, and Williams. We let them just go.
Yep.
And I'm sure there's more of them. You got Evan Ingram. You got
isn't it crazy
Shepard
to say?
well.
Isn't it crazy to say that out loud? Like, you know, again, it's like, yes, there's context to different decisions, but yeah, Julian Love, right? And that's the so fascinating part about it is they're all good players who have gotten better and thrived more where they've gone, but they all were fabrics of the leadership and the culture of the team. Like, one thing that a player said to me on breakup day was that, and he said, you know, I don't know if this is culture or what it is, but he said there's a feeling on our sideline when something goes wrong in a game that it's kind of like a, here we go again, you know, even if nobody says it, that's the mood. It's like, well, there it goes. Right. And so it's like, if the offense turns the ball over, the defense's reaction isn't, well, we're going to get a stop and turn this around and give it back to them. It's, oh boy, short field. And if the defense gives up a long touchdown pass, the offense's reaction isn't, we're going to go pick them up and go on an 18-play drive and go score. It's, oh man, now we're down again. We never win when we're down, you know? So, and then, so the players, you know, sorry to interrupt you there, but the players that you mentioned, they're the guys who were the backbone in those moments. Like Julian Love, McKinney, Williams, Saquon, above all, like they were the guys who were in everybody's ear. Like, we got this, right? Like that's the part that drives me nuts. You know, just
that's a cultural problem, and that's not going to be solved by getting, you know, you could draft whoever you want. We could have drafted Patrick Mahomes. You know, I mean, if that culture is not there, then that's a big problem. And I don't know how to change culture. actually, I do know how to change culture. But
How?
you just gotta change everything, change the way you practice, change everything, so that there's nothing similar from last year. So comfortability kills teams. And if they feel comfortable, oh, we're going to be on Tuesday and this, raise the bar of expectations. And if they're and raise it to a point where if you don't want to be on this team, it becomes brutally honest. Little thing what Tom Coughlin did was I didn't know why he
Okay.
and
So
I could
yeah,
never understand why he was doing it. I could never understand why he's doing it. But it was to let you know that if you're not willing to do this little thing by coming early, then you probably aren't really dedicated to the team. And those kind of little tests have to be made all the time to let people know that not only are you 100% involved, but everybody else on your team is involved. And the harder you work, the more you put into it, the less likely you are to give up. And maybe it's too easy over there. Maybe they're, the lunches and the nice facilities and all that stuff. Maybe it's making them feel a certain kind of comfort, but there should be nobody comfortable in that building. The last 2 years, it's I know the owner's not happy. I know that for a fact. I know that the
then
front
why is he
office isn't happy.
why is he running it back then?
I mean, I really can't answer that, but I can't answer that. That's his decision. That's the best. That's the best way to move forward with things.
All right.
And
So
yeah, that's what it is.
so to flip it to a couple potential silver linings, you were mentioning the investment in the offensive line, and there's a part of me that feels, we'll see what happens, and it's obviously a heavy lift. I think Chris Snee, your former teammate's presence in the front office and his eye on offensive line prospects could be the ace in the hole. Like if you're a Giants fan looking at,
Did he just get hired?
he was hired prior to last season, early, I think maybe last summer.
Mm.
So how do you feel about my hypothesis there that having, because listen, the way they've drafted offensive linemen in the last few years, especially that first draft, Joe Shane comes in, the Evan Neal, Josh Azudu, Marcus McKeithen draft, has them behind the eight ball. Even John Michael Schmitz, a second round pick out of Minnesota, still needs to be showing more to justify that investment. But, from knowing Chris, better than we do you feel like because he knows what it looks like, because he played for a Giants team that knows what it is to play Giants football, and he has that foundation of cultural and Giant awareness, like, can that be, even though he's just one person, could that be an X factor that kind of flips the switch for them?
I mean, if he was there last year and the offensive line this year was not much better, I mean, maybe another year or two he has to do it. But I don't know. First of all, I don't know how much they listen to him, and secondly, I don't know how much input he's having. But if he was there last year and they put together this offensive line, which was better than the year before, I'll give him that, but not much. I I mean, like, I would love to sit up here and say, oh yeah, Snee's going to fix it, but I know it's not that easy because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen up there, and I don't know what kind of actual input he actually has on that. But I trust Sneed, but I just don't know how much weight he has.
No, that's a really honest and smart answer. I mean, yeah, his technical term or title is senior scout, but to your point, there's a lot of scouts, plus there's all the executives over top of the scouts. So that's one evaluation coming in. So for that to carry weight, it needs to be pulled out of the pile and elevated, right? So that's a fair point. Also at your position, obviously one of the greatest Giants receivers ever yourself. We just watched their first round pick, Malik Neighbors, put some really good football on tape. Not perfect, a lot of pre-snap penalties, plenty of stuff to clean up. Still very young, though, 21 years old, and an explosive, dynamic talent. What do you think of Malik? What did you like about what you saw? and how would you just evaluate him right now after 1 year in the league?
I'd say he's very super productive. And he definitely has he has ability to get open, to catch the football. Consistency is something that most young players don't have. So I understand that he's not in a great situation in terms of, 3 different quarterbacks in his rookie season. But I think he has a lot of room to grow with his route running, with his consistently catching the football. And I want him to understand that he's not always going to be the guy who has the most targets in the entire football league. So he has to put up the similar numbers with probably 50 or 70 less targets, and then I'd say he's an elite guy. Other than that, I feel like he has so many opportunities that I hope like one thing that when you first get in there, they want to see what you got and all that stuff. They give you a lot of opportunity. And as you get more, more diverse offense, I mean, they really have nobody else, him and the running back. So I feel like he's going to have to be able to get the same numbers with less opportunities and be a part of an offense that's, more than just him.
Right. They force fed
really
him.
Kind of getting that elite category that his numbers showed that he was this year.
No, great point. 2 more quick ones. Thank you so much.
He had 20 targets sorry about that. He had he had like 18 targets, like twice, a lot during the season. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, I can't believe that. But hey, I'm jealous, of course. But man, I just want to understand that, this isn't normal. That's not going to be every time you get every year in the league.
No, for sure. Yeah, they force fed him. No, that was terrific. And it's unsustainable, right? It's not sustainable, and at times reflected, like you said, a lack of schematic creativity and also a lack of other weapons. And so they felt like they had to lean all the way on that. So he'll have to, when he's a part of a modern, productive, and multiple offense, be able to produce the same way. No, that's a great point. So 2 more quick ones. Thank you so much for your time, Amani, here. Really appreciate it. One, I was curious your reaction to Eli not getting into the Hall of Fame. Obviously, a firsthand part of his success and a former teammate and one of the great Super Bowl and playoff performers of all time.
Yeah, no, I feel like, Strahan didn't get on his first time. I don't know why. It's hard for me to really give a lot of credence to the Hall of Fame because of the fact there's so many players that I played against that are in that we didn't even game plan for. And then there's players that we did game plan for in terms of we got to look out for this guy week in and week out that aren't in. So I think it's a crapshoot. I think it's a popularity contest. The way that they judge who gets in the Hall of Fame is ridiculous to me. And it's the same thing as like the Pro Bowl. It's like, you got to have some flair, or you got to wear a lot of, like in that movie Office Space, you got too much flair on your jacket. You got to do something to get noticed as opposed to just playing football. And I just, it's tough for me because I felt like there was a lot of years there where I should have been in the Pro Bowl, or I should have been elevated, and because one reason or another I didn't. So and so when I look at the Hall of Fame and all these other things, I don't really give it a lot of credence. And I remember I tell a story all the time about the time I met Chris Carter right after he didn't get in on his first time. And I just was very surprised. I was like, Chris, why do you need these random reporters who never played in their lives, who only watch football on the sidelines, and they talk to people who have ulterior motives to acknowledge that you had a great career? I just don't get it. And so that's when I was really like, man, this Hall of Fame is crazy, but people go crazy over it. And a lot of these older players, like, they go crazy over it. And I'm sitting there like, I would be more on the TO camp. You know, TO is like, I'm not going, and I'm just going to have my own Hall of Fame party at my house because I'm not cowing down to allowing somebody else to control what I know to have been a great career. And that's why I'm totally on Camp TO when it comes to how you handle the Hall of Fame and all these other ancillary media-driven. I mean, look at the MVP race this year. It's ridiculous.
Oh my God,
It is
ridiculous.
ridiculous with Josh Allen. Ridiculous.
There are, and I'm not always, you know, I don't, I usually just evaluate the vote and I don't go towards like complaining about the voters, but when they released the votes, I'm not going to use any names, but there were more than a handful of people who voted for the MVP who, in my opinion, should not have a vote for that award. And, you know, listen, I think,
like they have former players that were never any good that are like, oh, well, you to be on the elite level. I'm like, you weren't on the elite level. How are you telling anybody else how to be on their elite level? Oh, how do you got to take the next step?
No,
For a long
100%.
time. I mean, not a great player. He was a player, not a great player, a player for a long time. And I respect his opinion. But like when you're talking about an upper echelon, something that you've never even like flirted with, or Emmanuel Acho, who played 4 years, where he's talking about like some of these guys, I'm just like, whoa, easy. I mean, you could talk about being in the NFL, that's great, but you talking about elite stuff, like, nah, buddy, you don't have the pelts on your wall. Your Palmeiras don't allow you to get in the upper echelon. And you know, some people can say that about me, but like, I feel like I flirted with it more than they did.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, and also,
they did, you know what I mean?
I'm glad you said the part right at the beginning too. You mentioned that it stuck out to you that some guys were in the Hall of Fame that you never game plan for, and there were guys who aren't in that you always game plan for. And you know, I know enough to know there's a lot I don't know. Right? I didn't play in the NFL. I never played football. I played a bunch of different sports. Never played football. I'm not going to sit here and say I know more than players like yourself about the game. But my firm belief on the Hall of Fame, very simply, without getting into all the weeds, is if the guy wasn't an obvious Hall of Famer when he was playing, how can you what's the point of deciding after his career, oh, let's parse his stats and look at how he did this and didn't do that? It's like, no. Go ask the people who played against the guy. Was he great? Like
or just like, did we double team him? Did we like, was he on the front page of when we were going our game plan? Was he a main concern, or was he just a guy on the field that ended up, like it's hard. You're right. Go. Sorry, I'm gonna cut you off.
No. Great point. All right. Last one. As a Michigan man, how excited are you to have Wink Martindale as the defensive coordinator now going into his second year there? Obviously was a big loss for the Giants, but Michigan with Sharon Moore after, a kind of a predictable rocky start with all the talent they lost early on, found their footing, knock off Ohio State, holding them to 10 points. And, Wink, a huge part of that seemingly culturally and also scheme wise.
Yeah, I'm not surprised when you go from the NFL and how you scheme and the details that it takes to prepare for a pro game and the lack thereof at a college game. I knew it would take a long time for Wink to really understand the limitations of time, the limitations of the complexities of the game, and then start to take advantage and use his NFL acumen to, break down protections, to put people in different positions, and to bring blitzes from places that they never thought. So I was surprised about kind of how long it took him, maybe, but towards the end of the year, they were cooking with bacon grease, and that defense is really legitimate. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the future, because the more people are understanding what Wink is doing and schematically, the freer they can play, and you're going to start to see this Michigan defense really become like the Baltimore Ravens, where you just, no matter who they have, you just can't figure out where the blitz is coming from, especially from a young quarterback in college who doesn't have the time to really put in the film study to get the tells that all these defenses innately have.
Very well said. Very well said. Amani, this has been a fantastic conversation. We are brought to you here on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard on the Believe Network and on the PL on NFL YouTube channel by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, My Bookie Sportsbook, Estate 98 Coffee, and Sal Loretta for Men in Bergen County, New Jersey. He is the one and only Amani Toomer, Super Bowl champion, Giants Ring of Honor inductee. Amani, thank you so much for your honesty and your candid analysis of the Giants. The goal here, obviously, is to figure this
Giants
out.
Better. I want
Right.
to win. You know what
I
mean? I'm walking around with my chest out. You know what I mean? Like we walking around like we're the Jets or something. You know, that's crazy.
No doubt. And you are doing your part. I know there's a lot of noise out there that, from fans or frustrated fans, and they don't want to hear certain things, but I think you're doing your part by being harshly honest, because that's the only way it's going to turn around, is if people face the real issues here. So thank you so much for your time here.
Yeah, thank you. If I always tell people, if you don't want my honest opinion, don't ask me the question. So that's what it is.
We respect it here. Thank you so much for talking ball.
All right, thank you. I'll talk to you guys later.